everybody. Welcome back to episode 2 of our awesome conversations with Andre and Steve. You know, when these guys get together, we've been talking now for a little bit, and there's just electricity, there's just fire, there's just so much going on. And Andre's made these incredible documentaries, and we were sharing some of our experiences and how the people have responded to him and all the journeys that he's gone through helping sisters. Andre, would you care to talk a bit about that?
Yeah. At the moment, I don't think too many people have gotten through them, but that's okay. It's like it's not designed to be easy. It's designed to hit you and get you up to speed. And I think a lot of people have just processed them, and they've got to take them in bits, and then absorb them, and then let it integrate. And then, you know, we talked about the consciousness Tetris, where you might get a component and it sits and it integrates, and Andrew talks about cellular memory, so it has to filter through, and it feels like that, and I'm just producing them at my pace, because I can work pretty quick, and they're just out there, and when the inspiration comes, it's just like yeah I'll go with it and see what comes together, and then all of a sudden I'll get all on the same topic, and it's for me, it's a really good flow. But this is core with the way I work. I don't have a vested interest in the outcome at all. I only invest in what I can do, and then it's an offering and it's out there, because I don't have any attachment to it, if that makes sense.
You're doing it in a pay-it-forward scenario where you are taking the creativity, because eventually it will be co-created with, whether it's one line in the montage of clips, or it's the quote or paste the thing that you put at the end, or the commentary that you put in the typewritten section that connects the dots of the material so a pattern can be recognized, and a soul code between you and the observer can be traded in equal equity.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's where you talk about the sacred neutral. When I operate it, and I've got to be that, because the fascinating thing about everyone is everyone's unique, and you never know what it might be, the component for them. And if you input something, you might actually contaminate it for them, and that's where I'm very conscious of how I might be contaminating a journey for an individual. So that's why, you as a messenger, Andrew, you've just got to be in that, because you're pushing the envelope so much. You've got to be on that very fine line,
Sometimes
looking for a reason not to take it.
Sometimes there's literally one word that can misdescribe a situation that can turn an entire audience down a line of thinking that will waste dozens of weeks of self-study. One word can mean that much. So I take great pains to remain in that neutral observer of the information, so my translation remains in the neutrality. And we use this word translation because I'm taking something that only exists in a frequency of light, recreating it through a voice box and through a chakra system, so it creates sound in this world, which is going to be remembered in a frequency of light and a chemical pattern in a brain. So there is much more behind the words that makes sure, even if people are psychically turned off, that what the representation is cannot accurately be said. So here is the other carrier wave of the infinite information that's based on this equation that turns into be this language.
So I operate that way, and I know Steve, when I listen to Steve, he's the same. You take all the information, you process it, and you offer it, and you are very neutral as well. So.
I try. Sometimes I feel my energy polarize, and as much as it's my initial intent and policy to be neutral about things, sometimes I do a disservice to myself by not being neutral.
It's actually really cool what you suggested about you don't have to live in the neutral, because Andrew, I know you've got to be all the time, but then there's others of us, like, we don't have to. We can actually bring a non-neutrality, but it's a return to the balance.
To say that I live in neutrality all the time is not exactly full truth, because as a human being in this matrix world, I am inevitably pulled into polarity. It's about what I let go before I go to sleep, and when I wake up, that there's no additional residue of polarity. That's the main thing that people should understand about the sacred neutrality. Polarity is inevitable, and polarity is not always bad and dense. It can be a lot of light energy. That's a tough lesson. And the only way you can process the dense light energy is through going through this manifest process where the body begins to learn the right way to take this energy in. So the next time the energy comes that's not light dense energy, it is dark or crusty dense energy, the body rejects it at the skin layer and leaves it in the aura, so that it is much more fainter in its representation of how it's going to change the sympathetic or parasympathetic reactions.
I remember you also mentioning in the Light Language series about, there are times when all these things have happened, and sometimes you just need to, and you were just saying the word, and just with that, okay, you can just let it all out, and then there's something you can say afterwards then to calm it, so that you are able to have that experience, you are able to feel that passion, that fire, but then it's the training and the understanding in yourself to observe it and then see if that's something that's congruent to fire you and your willful determination perhaps to go forward, or if it's something that you just had to let go of, because sometimes when there is a polarity and a lot of people hold these things within, the cellular structures themselves start to get ill.
And then they co-create with something that's false representation.
Yes.
And that's where the inner voices get hijacked, or you literally hijack your own inner voice by just giving it enough power to be a debate for many days, weeks, months, or years. And then after a while, that debate grows into frustration, hesitation, doubt, and then finally the lightning cloud of anger is always over you.
And then you have what is depression, that's rage turned inwards.
Correct.
So then you have, for example, when you have these things, you see a lot of these people that endeavor to be really sacred neutral and really spiritual.
But they only do it in ceremonies, and then the rest of the time they're not.
Or these ones that try and do it all the time, but they don't have the training and they're just eating it inside because they thought that they have to keep it at that still point the whole time without actually working through, chewing through, digesting literally the whole process, and then being able to excrete it accordingly, from their body, in whichever way.
Many people that are in the
energetically or physically
first expression of sacred neutral, like Andre, how many different layers of sacred neutral have you come across since you first heard about it?
That's a good question.
Yeah, a lot. I'm very empathic, so I guess the first level was, is this me or is this someone else?
There you go.
Yeah. So, and I'm tough on myself, so I take it that it's me and it's not the other person, so that makes it tougher. So why am I feeling this in me? And I explore in me, why am I feeling this? And it took me a long time. I mean, the next level or 3 or 4 would have been that, hey, I've done all my work, it's not me. So now I can hold my field and not take it on board, but being courageous, and that's why I wear it. It's you're not only taking on your stuff, you're taking on everyone else's, but you're actually processing at a lot higher rate because you're adding extra variables that might not be yours, because the shadow self blocks you from your truth. So, if you're not willing to go into your shadow, then there's anything's potential. So,
and when you go to the sacred neutral and you begin to use it as a regular base of inner operation, you get to go through the moments where polarity forces you out of the neutrality so that you can come back to it later and question yourself. How do I stay in neutrality the next time I'm triggered at the fight, flight, adrenaline mechanism that had the cloud of anger that's in my most subtlest background that happened to have lightning bolted out at me because a telemarketer called at 8:30 in the morning?
Oh, well, then that was the classic what happened this morning when you were talking to Steve, and I came in, I was like, oh my goodness, I cannot believe this, and the audacity of it, and then I was laughing about it too, because I was actually laughing at myself being outraged about it at the same time.
By you letting that out, let go of the polarity.
Yes.
It doesn't mean that polarity is not going to return. It for that moment, it was deflated.
Equalized, yes.
So when polarity, we go into regular forms of polarity that is teaching and good for us. Like example, hard work for those versus those people that grew up that never did any work. Their version of hard work is 10 beads of sweat.
Yeah.
We're talking a full day's work. So when you go into polarity, sacred neutrality can carry through emotional moments for immediate now letting go. Now, so many people think there's no emotions in sacred neutral. There are. You just must have to learn to live in the moment and for them to be immediate glow into long-term memory so that they don't stay in the sympathetic or parasympathetic program side.
I've had the experience, I've understood it, I've recognized it. Now it is in my memory, but I no longer experience it. I glean only the wisdom therefrom.
Correct.
Yes.
And then the next layer to that is, can a sacred neutral being defend itself like a warrior? And the answer is absolutely yes.
With absolute strength.
With
the
absolute
inner core heart
strength
space strength.
of enforcing sovereign neutral boundaries in all dimensions, time, planes, galaxies, and universes. And then when you go a next step further, when a being begins to penetration test you. This is why I tell people to use a bravado voice when you're doing the contract revocation. So that's regularly practiced, that bravado has heart roll to it, because you are truly empowering it to mean something to this reality that is being heard by your sympathetic, parasympathetic side. And if there is a whisper, an external whisper source that's going after you, the more and more waves of bravado energy, the more and more it has to refigure out its particular plan. Does it pull out the feeding tube and try to attach to somewhere else so it's not whispering to you more? Or is it going to wait and come back when you're asleep because it knows you're lazy?
Knows you're lazy.
Okay?
That's
it
a
knows
good
you're
one.
lazy. So the next thing, sacred neutral, is always the endurance of remaining sacred neutral. Okay? Why is it an endurance? Because we live in a moment of now that has a opposite reality of sacred, false sacred geometry infrastructure that's putting to us a false reality, and we as awake beings know this and still at some level give it tacit consent to exist. So there's still a density exchange. This is why understanding the term separation of densities is so vital. This is the teaching that allows you to live with that matrix and for it to never give you any dense debt, only the light of growth.
Powerful words there, Andrew. Indeed. Indeed.
Can I focus on something that you said there? It's like you said you know it, but then you go back into an acclimatization of the reality. You know, because one pattern I see is that being an individual against a chorus of society, it's actually you feel an outsider, and Michael Desarian talks about this really well. And because you as one, you feel, you know, if you have a perception that the many are powerful and you're not, then there's an assimilation back into it. Would that be a good way to sort of put it? Or
another way to look at
to
look at this in an upside down, inside out way is it is still hierarchical order. So when one internally becomes the apex of their own hierarchical order, there is no other need for any other hierarchical order. It is the natural way. And understanding the natural way versus a hierarchical order, even at its most subtle level, that labels through class, gender, race, religion, whatever it is still going through a false separation of densities. True separation of density is light-liked beings, light, same L-I-G-H-T, light beings with the same colored frequency, operating the same frequency of time, gives the equation for unity exist in a moment of now.
I had something to add to a bunch of different things, talking about everything involved with being neutral versus the polarities and whatever. Because as like Andre would have mentioned, like, you know, like I do keep a lot of neutrality, but I also mentioned a little bit, and I want to extrapolate on it because of how I see things a little differently. And feel free to be critical of it because. I'm not saying I'm right. I'm just saying that this is just part of my experience so far, is that I'm a person that always can go back to center, but at the same time, I start from neutrality, and if I feel compelled in a way that I believe will be positive, I will polarize myself in the moment, because sometimes you're called to action, and that's when you go out of being the objective observer to the subjective participant. And I think that that's important, and that reflects upon to put it through an old expression as Shakespeare, or whoever Shakespeare was the front for, said, all the world's a stage. And so we all have our acts and our scenes to play out. And you can choose to opt out if you want, but then you never get any screen time. And it's A, not as exciting for you. B, you don't get to move the story forward because it is a pseudo improvised script. And so for me, I think that that's important. You know, it's just like our radio station has taken a polarized stance based on the ferocity of it being subjected to the station the way that it has in presentation of flat Earth theory, to the point where the director of the station basically has been forced to take as a general topic of discussion at the station, flat Earth is not to be really discussed. It can be discussed in the context of you're going to have a particular show with a particular guest about flat Earth. But as far as our roundtables are concerned, as far as you calling in and talking about it or whatever, it's become an extreme distraction, and we've all had to take an extreme polarized position because it was hurting the station. We were losing subscribers to the very few avenues of revenue that a completely listener supported station has. And so that's a place where we have to take up a particular role as adversary to flat Earth.
Correct. But to understand, your station was being played by an organized op that was getting the gullible light workers who look for the latest instant gratification material so that they can go out there and once again put together something that we got through in the Dark Ages.
Pontificate.
Okay? Pontificating philosophers. And for that individual, I'm not going to go into that level of clarity, but to say who it is an idiot. Okay, there is no flat Earth, and if right now I'll say that if you guys believe in a flat Earth, you pretty much screwed up the Enlightenment for everyone else. Why? Because you've gone back to the Dark Ages of control. It isn't a single-dimensional planet; it's multi-dimensional, and you need to start thinking like a multi-dimensional being.
Yeah, I mean, they got people believing like the sun is like 60 miles wide, or like it's ridiculous.
Church dogma. Church dogma. Once again, church dogma that's been reiterated and re-understood by what? Truthers who don't know what the fuck they're talking about. They don't.
Then how can they be truthers?
Because it's an industry that says truth.
But you know what? You
Exactly.
see the irony. You're
of
calling them truthers, but they're not even speaking their own truth, because if they had found their own truth, they would know for sure that this is baloney.
But how many times have I said we cannot judge their false truth?
Right.
Because everyone is true in their own individual believable end.
Well, we're always right because we create our own world. So for that one individual
who happened to comes from Texas who has enforced out flat Earth theory, I'm telling you now, well, I think you need to redirect your audience into something a little bit more accurate than once again going back to church dogmas from 400 AD.
Right. And they're complete non sequiturs, because even aside from that, other examples of polarity, right? I was once on one of our roundtables having a very, very important discussion of, the old dog of the truth movement, 9/11, and having all these talks. And then one of my friends, who normally isn't a non sequitur kind of guy, he's all of a sudden bringing up the reptilian conspiracy within the portion of it. And I was being polite with him. I was like, dude, you know me. I do believe in the reptilian conspiracy, but we're not marrying those two concepts right now, and you're damaging the current subject at hand. So that's another point where I had to go into, not as extreme as flat Earth, especially because I was respecting where he was coming from in acknowledging reptilians, but we're not talking about extraplanetary type stuff. We're not going galactic historian about it. We're going about Earth history. We're talking about
your
American tyranny,
exactly,
and things like that. And there's no bearing on something which hasn't even been proved to the public yet. We're still working on processing the Edward Snowden revelations. And let alone getting people still on an official level to get us to a point where we can, do something about 9/11 being an inside job because it hasn't stuck anywhere in a court system yet. So
Like you're targeting a specific audience. That's what you're gearing the information for. So I mean, like these sort of things, Andrew. I mean, to me, it's like you know how I mentioned in the other chat we had is that the people that haven't done the inner work that are offering them like potentially to be compromised, and then they come into a public space, and then there's something that comes in and wants them to influence the whole conversation. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not saying this individual or anything, but it's a commonality that happens. And Steve, you're on the public front with the radio and stuff like that, and you know it. You know it. It's tangential the topic that comes in, so it's not organic. That's what I'm sort of suggesting, and it's something.
There's
to
an
keep an eye out.
agenda.
That's all.
There's an agenda behind the psyops that the truth industry doesn't want to acknowledge. Like, it's understood that Sorshafal is Navy intelligence and has given out as much false information as right information. The same goes with every other one. So why are they believing the truthers if they're only 50% right 50% of the time? Because there's nothing else out there that's giving any form of other truth that isn't commercialized. So people have taken this instant gratification to have fact check behind it, when in fact nothing has fact check behind it. Even our current propaganda news isn't fact checked. You start fact checking the news, you'll find out 40% of their stories are outright lies.
Yeah.
I mean, all the
that's
news
right.
does is that they repeat the signal from the official source instead of doing anything actually journalistic and going out there and running an investigation of their own. They'll sit there and they will like, okay, a crime's going on. There's a FBI investigation about it. Instead of doing an independent investigation, maybe really going to the FBI and grilling them and asking them questions, they just wait patiently like good little lapdogs for their public digestion official report from the FBI, in which then they will select everything from within that report and regurgitate it out to you on the television or on the Washington Post or whatever of what the government people were gathering. And at the end of the day, that is how you fail at journalism, because you are the first line of defense against tyranny, and you cannot be protected against tyranny if you are not practicing due diligence on the government itself. And that is the biggest problem. That is the biggest problem. Plain and simple. And me, with my lack of resources, I am forced into a situation where I'm as good as what I am because I look at a subject on the internet and I just grab, 3 to 5 different like sources of information about that subject and find the lines of delineation and use discernment, cognitive dissonance, and figure out where the story isn't matching up, and figuring out, is all of that lies or it doesn't even matter. It could all match up amongst all stories, and even the thing that matches up could still be a lie. That's how stupid it is. And at the end of the day, the best thing that we can do is at least say, this is suspicious to me. And it's always fair to say that this is suspicious to me. And you'll know you're hitting the target when somebody establishment thinks you're stupid for being suspicious. Oh, I'll be like, thank you. You just validated my suspicion.
My scenario. And for just a minute ago, I allowed myself to go into polarity to talk about that flat Earth scenario. So have I retained it? No. But was that building up in me? Yes, because I can't tell you how many emails or questions are on YouTube, because it isn't just your station. It's everyone that's gotten hit by this, is flat Earth real? And I, want to reiterate, it is a psyop. It's an absolute... Yeah. Suddenly, every internet's talking about the flat Earth being real and it's a holographic reality. Come on, guys. You're smarter than that. And for the people that are regurgitating it, you have to know that you have a responsibility for every word. For example, there are 2 blogs that for the longest time were very high quality. In the last 6 months, they've become absolutely atrocious regurgitating scenarios, so I took them off of my my frame of even reference anymore, because all they're redoing is the same guy over and over again, and they are not putting any other perspective that is anything relevant to change and getting rid of propaganda. It's Jade Helm this, IRS that, and nothing to do with the truth of what's going on in the moments of now. It is fear porn, love and light. Fear porn, love and light. And our truther movement has been polarized into this, where all of their show is fear porn or it's the love and light. And we need those shows that begin to cross over fear porn and love and light, which is what this show has been an attempt to do. To take that middle ground of neutrality, to let go of fear, to let go of the love and light, because love and light ain't going to save you either. So that we can come to a medium point where we can all retune our inner senses. You know, before, Steve, you were talking about you come to center. How do you know where your center is? Is it innate to you? Is it innate? Does it change every season, every winter? Is it based off of the density polarity energy? You've learned how to turn on your energy machine to burn dark or dense energy. Are you really aware of where your sacred neutral is? The answer is yes, you do. You've had your moments, but you always must retune yourself to sacred neutral, because it changes within us. Because sacred neutral changes moment to moment, second to second, based on how much is retaining in your physical memory, trying to overpower your heart space of full knowingness.
I was just sort of saying, knowingness to knowingness, and that's the key, because it's really within that knowingness. Then you have the experience, and then you have a further knowingness. Is that integrated? So what is then my sacred neutral? Now I know this. Okay, now with that understanding, I can observe this. But am I then at sacred neutral?
Yeah. One of the advantages I have with reading the Akashic records the way I do is I have hindsight at the same moment that I'm speaking it simultaneously.
Mm-hmm.
So I can get the impact on the audience, not just the individual listener.
The way that I do it is that there's a place where I don't where I don't feel it as a reaction. You know, it's this place of non-reaction, right? So the way I here's a visual aid for you real quick. Here, I got two items in my hand, right? I've got this charger. We'll say this is polarity A. It doesn't have, you can be positive, negative, whatever you want it to be. Here's polarity B. Now, where you see my face in the screen, that's the void space. It's not in any polarity. Think of these like two molecules in all of reality, and I am like a ninja. I'm stepping between the drops of rain as they fall. So these are, and so this is where I stay out of the reaction zones, and I look at them like opportunities, like doors, challenges that present themselves, to take a side or to take a side, so on and so forth. And that's kind of part of our time stream, if you will, and so those opportunities pass me by. Two more pop up because the time to polarize to those had passed. I chose not to take one. This one, this looks a little exciting to me.
See,
I'm excited by this.
There's something to add there.
Especially because this means nothing to me. I'm going to take a risk and take my quantum path down this way. And that's the way I operate. This is a very, very...
I understand. I understand what you're saying. And a little more definition when it comes to the sacred neutral, and you have your object to your left and or your right. You see, you can still have the experience in the sacred neutral and retain information and continue forward with that experience. It is choosing to have an experience in non-polarity, meaning that all of your energy frequency is a part of the communication. It is the infinite stream. And we can learn to bilocate into the two sides of polarity and try and have 3 streams or 10 streams, depending on the types of DNA strands you are attempting to connect to. So the way you set up your answer, there's another way to understand. You can continue with the experiences from the sacred neutral because it is allowing all frequency of the light beingness to incorporate it at the memory level, which is light, which is memories which are stored in light from this original photonic reality. So it is a circuit completion when you are in that sacred neutral process, that it's not just neutral as a car gear. It can go forward, first, second, third, and fourth gear, and still maintain knowingness, all the different paths that the individual being wants to go to, they are just not retaining the polarity that could drive them to the furthest ends of obsession, depression, regression, shame, blame, or guilt.
The chemicals released by the brain when one thinks into polarity, be it absolute anger, rage, suppression,
Correct.
depression, because that then blocks the integration,
Yeah.
because the chemicals, right? The chemicals are hindering that. And so your sympathetic and your parasympathetic have been marred. And then to get the true understanding, it's not, it's still stuck in polarity, because this is blocking an integration of a neutral perspective.
Correct. So one more thing is, there are times you could have like a compass with something magnetic next to it, and it just puts it just a little bit off. When we retain the slightest amounts of dense energy, our sacred neutral compass can be easily off if we don't use heart space centering as a regular activity.
Well, you get that also with women, for example, the week, when you get premenstrual tension,
Yes.
or with a lot of men, they're really stuck on the moon cycles, and you can see that, that's also the cycle of the body that one has to then understand, because those times are then key. If someone has triggers like that, those times are key for when the density can really become extreme, but when you're also capable of then getting your greatest understandings.
Exactly.
That's the conundrum on these things sometimes, isn't it?
I think with those of us that are a little bit more empathically sensitive, that has a lot to do with it as well. As an empath, I can go and you can hear it all the time if you listen to me on my show, and depending on circumstances, if you see me in real life or whatever, or like you see me get really really excited about something, or you hear it, like as an empath, it can really really get amplified, because it becomes more obvious, the emotional commitment, and the emotion is the expression of the energetic charge that is coming from when you leave neutral. And so I'm very sensitive of that. I know when I'm going to do it.
You're giving away.
You're be very cognizant of my actions when I choose to go there.
You're giving away the nature of your coping skill, which is to immediately alchemize energy that's in your field. That is why you can go from sacred neutral to being super happy, because you've taken whatever energy is in your field and literally flipped it into attitude is everything, and made your attitude emanate the energy which gave you the complete action of creativity for that moment. Many, many people out there just cannot turn on the smile because somewhere in their mind they think it's fake. Literally, when you go into smile mode, real smile mode, you are actually changing the chemical imprints of your body. And then the fake smile, people no longer are doing that. When you go to the true authentic smile, just like you described, that's a coping mechanism for instantly translating any energy into creation, inspiration, and dreams. Because it is through creation and co-creation that we get to learn about the inner spirit self and the external spirit self that is trying to get us to remember the internal first and then communicate with the external in spiritually hygiene understood ways, so that you don't retain dense energy, so that your sacred neutral polarity is a balance with the planet. So when something of a bigger scale of information comes to you and makes you think of fear porn or love and light, that you can remain the neutral and still learn everything about both sides of the polarity, retain it in cellular memory, and then go on to the next subject in still knowingness as a being moment to moment to moment living, having never actually take that exchange of the density of the information, but the information as raw knowingness understood.
I've got something to add on that, Andrew. One of my mentors of like the last year, and he's been really galvanizing in me to be an anchor for, say, the region. So when exactly what you're saying, when some news comes out that may trigger the fight or flight, the milking sort of life force energy sort of stuff, if you're in neutral and you're an anchor, you can actually negate it on a very large scale, because it only takes a very small number of people to be in their region to negate the whole negativity, because the dark needs so much input to create the dark because it's not natural, whereas the neutral and the the love and light and stuff doesn't need a lot. It only needs a few in the regions. Do you want to suggest, like, offer something relative
Yeah, I
to
got
that?
a cool little association for you. The system has done whatever it can do to make sure that we have acidic bodies. That is now working against them. They cannot put as much debt into us as they did before because our acidic bodies are rejecting it at the core energy because it can no longer handle this new debt that they're putting on. This is why there's a massive attempt to relabel GMO food. Massive attempt. Because they need to change up the style because people have built up an immunization to something that was for the benefit of the sacred geometry system so they can put dense and dark energy on you. Once you clear out your intestinal tract, you have a brand new spiritual perspective right there. And understanding that intestinal tract alkaline system ultimately determines how fast you can process in sacred neutral or in polarities. So one of the next things that I want to talk about here in our little group and round table is the need to not exchange energy and to still have an experience. So that people can get a firm understanding that when you're making a stance in the sacred neutral, you are telling the field of ancestral energy, physical energies, matrix energy, I am choosing not to exchange energy. It is my sovereign right.
Yeah, I mean, for me, my training lies with the horses. You know, there's some really haunted horses out there. And when you are dealing with such beings and such entities that are, you know, really taking control of such beings, you need to be in the sacred neutral, but you also need to be able to make a stand and say, you will not pass like that, but it has to be heart-spaced.
Right.
It has to be in that place of, it stops here, I see it, I understand it, I recognize it, and I'll take this.
With no feeder tubes.
Yes, but I take that as the experience, and now I've understood, and I'm here to help should you wish to accept that.
Which is that individual horse being that was being manipulated by something manipulating its own words.
Exactly. And so what happens is it's that heart-spaced eminence that comes out, and that eminence, that willful determination to make sure that this is its highest possible capacity of love, to make sure that you don't entangle and then take on all of the stuff from those horses, because as an empathic person, extremely empathic, you take it on. And I know Andre and Steve were also talking about their empathy and how they cope with it. Like Andre, you were sharing before offline how for you choose very, very carefully who you allow your energy to be exchanged with. And it's almost like you observe, and then at some time point you're like, okay, now I'm going to go. Would you care to go further into that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, Andrew, you asked me early on about the layers of sacred neutral. You go through these development stages, and I said that to be hard on myself, I took on board everything as me. I knew that it possibly wasn't, but I felt it was the hard road, but it would toughen me up very quick because you get the experience, like knowledge in action, Andrew. You know, you talk about that. So
Action
but then
turns-
what happened was, yeah, action turns knowledge into wisdom. So then what I did is I retreated totally, and then I totally separated from everyone to witness myself. And I like that word witness because it's perceiving what's going on with you, but you're objectively looking. You're not invested in it. And then what happens is that you realize that there was a really big point, and you talk about the precipice of trust in other places, and it's trusting yourself that, look, this is not me, okay? I know it now, and it's coming from external. And then, like, it was after a lot of work. It wasn't going in the first step, like, it's not me, I'm a bloody victim, you know, whatever. No, it's like, that was like one of the final stages, and then after that, you can sort of take it. But the sacred neutral you say is like, I have this vision in myself, and I mean, I go back to a particular playground when I was a child, and the playgrounds now, I got to say this, they're soft. Like, they used to be battlegrounds, you know, when we were kids. Like,
exactly, gladiatorial arenas of fifth grade personalities.
You might die in a playground in the 1980s. You know what I mean? So, but the seesaws The
The
seesaws
brutal
used
torture
to be,
devices that kids created. Yes.
I love seesaws. I love them.
Yeah, but I visualize myself. I'm standing in the middle and balancing it with my eyes shut. So it's like you go into that up and down on each leg, and you can feel the polarity like pulling you one way. But if you can maintain it, it's like the Karate Kid doing the chop on that block. You know what I mean? It's like you're in harmony, and you feel it, and you can feel the gravity going one way, and it's very, very subtle, but yeah. So I feel the emotions and the information come at me, and if they're trying to pull me one way, it's like, okay, what's in me that might be doing this? Or yeah, that's probably long enough spill, but
No, that's really, really good. So one thing I want to touch on to add more layers to what Andre just said is our feet are the windows to our body. Our eyes are windows to the soul. Our feet are massive sensing systems. So for people that are heavily empathic like Andre and Steve and Natalie and myself and any of others out there, your feet can reject dense energy. There are individual beings who figured out how to look like a pool of water, quite literally, or just like a stain on a rug. And when you stand on that for a long enough period of time, you begin to absorb them through the feet, which has tens of thousands of pores. So for those people that are really, really want to start dealing with their empathic overload, you start doing something like create a piece of jewelry around your ankles, putting pink Himalayan salt in a small little bag and keeping it around your ankles. You must also see that your tibia and fibia that connect to your foot are like a tuning fork. So every step you take, the tibia and fibia are ringing at a particular level, which send energies into your knees, where the majority of your ganglions and nerve centers from your calf and up work with your energy meridians that process the energy that is coming through your feet. We live in a world where they want you in rubber shoes to disconnect you from the sweet ground of the earth. So we must take careful understanding of the feet as empathic people. Once we've taken careful understanding of the feet, we must take a new look with hindsight at how our hands interact with just as dense energy, because the two bones in your wrist are the same type of tuning forks. Okay, we see our parasympathetic as just on the inside in our governing our conception vessel, connected to our eyes, lungs, and the autonomic functions, and the sympathetic side's connected to all the physical working nerves of the awake brain. So that process of understanding how that energy works is where we apply sacred neutrality in all situations. From within the center of the sympathetic and parasympathetic in non-reaction mode, in heart space, we can overcome any energetic habit pattern, or use the cancel, cure, and delete process, contract revocations, where you have made a delineation that this is now sacred neutral, and I am now doing something for the sacred healing of the self.
Right, and we have our solstice event coming up, and in that event you'll hear about a really, really interesting alchemical process that you can do with your own footprints. But we'll get into that then. But whilst we're talking about the feet, I just wanted to mention the solstice coming up, because that exercise is
special.
Yeah, it's truly unique, and I actually I've heard of it in specific things with animals, but I've never heard of the human actually, using this kind of alchemy with their own footprint. So stay tuned for that solstice event, guys. It will really blow your mind, this one.
And for those of you that saw the first one, you know how much information we're able to pack in that 3 hour show.
Yeah.
What's coming for you is, once again, I'm going to top it again with even more tips and tools and understandings of how to have knowingness in application.
So what I liked about when Steve was talking about the different phases of his neutrality and how he used these marker points, the greatest thing is that we're actually sitting here and we're having a conversation comparing how each of us have learnt how to practice our own spiritual cleanliness, how to practice maintaining what we've worked for so hard so that we can function in the matrix without adhering to it in its minimal of energetic forms. And you know that's quite something, really. If you just contemplate this conversation in itself, I mean, it really is a great honor speaking with you guys. You know.
Yeah, and this is why we did this in 2 parts, because we want people to contemplate part 1.
Right.
So when part 2 comes, they have an understanding the level of this conversation. We have set the bar high because there are 4 people here in knowingness of some facts about this world. And there's a moment where we all need some facts that we can grow anchors to, because we know we create our own reality. And the facts we're choosing to anchor to is we can create our own reality. And for those that say accept hierarchical order, no, we will not accept your hierarchical order because I create my own reality.
That's right.
That's our common bringing together of perspectives here, because no one here in this conversation wants to be in domination and control.
And that's the thing, you know, you have people that they're all about free will and respect and everything, but then they have a belief. And they push that belief on you, and they always are trying to justify their belief in whatever way and however the conversation goes. And you guys have had that, right, Andre, Steve, where someone just has this belief and they keep pushing it through and they keep pushing it through. Is that invading your sovereign free will space?
That's a good question. You see, like the core for it with me, and I think for any of us in this field that goes into the public field that is of the internet for the whole conspiracy thing is that there's two kinds. There's 2 kinds out there 3 kinds out there that you come across. There's people that are just talking about government conspiracy stuff, but then there's the people that get into the esoteric that have 2 separate categories. There's us, which doesn't put any kind of dogmatic limit, and then there is the ever paranoizing
The zealots.
born again Christian community. It's the born again Christian community that takes the Book of Revelations dead serious, and the system is their matrix of control is looking at all these little things that are constantly reinforcing the idea that that the Great Tribulation is upon us, or it started yesterday, and they are in a special kind of scary place because they get very, very neurotic about it. Because they believe their millennium is coming, but at the same time they also believe in the persecution of the Antichrist is coming before that, and then they're running around trying to get you to convert to Christianity because you sort of believe the same things they believe in, and you're trying to get them to be in a place where post-tribulation you'll be with them going through the millennium all happy-go-lucky with the reign of Christ for 1,000 years. And that's who you're constantly coming across. And there's all sorts of different walks of life. There are people that are talking about, cryptids in respect to like Old Testament stuff. There's people talking about flat Earth in a sense, and equating that to their Christian paradigm again. Because, like you said, Andrew, it's a Dark Ages thing. There's no such thing as aliens. They're all demons. You're either an angel or you're a demon. And if you say you're an alien, it must mean you're a demon, because there's no such thing as a good alien. And that's the kind of paradigm that you're in. Like there's no such thing as spirits that are benevolent. Spirits are all demons. The whole thing is overtly simplified, goes back to a reinforcement of the scriptures, and at the end of the day, if you're going to engage with them, the only thing that you can really say is whose version of the scriptures are you talking about?
Exactly, whose version? And then there's the billion Hindus. Right. Then there's the billion Hindus that live in India that have nothing to do with it. Then the billion Chinese who have nothing to do with it. And then the billion Malaysians and Australians who have nothing to do with that. See, we live at a time where hierarchical order is trying to enforce its hierarchical order at a global scale or a universal scale. And it's the letting go of that singular bullshit line that there is a hierarchical order of singular saving, when in fact there's going to be an infinite amount of ways, because it's just the way it's been. Long before Christianity and Hinduism and Buddhism was there was something else, and something else before that, and something else before that. That's the understanding that hierarchical system that of now is going to be coming to. You know, the Christians, the ones that are at the fundamentalist layer, they've reached the level of zealotry. Now, many of them have to spend hours a day on a computer unless they're out there proselytizing. And they make it up by going into said chat rooms. Now, I've experienced it. Some of them are really cool, and they stick around, and then they post their go-to-church thing, and then they disappear, and then the other ones that are aggressive. You know, in this public world, what do? You delete them. Just like the previous troll before that, and the previous troll before that, and the previous troll before that. Because they are just a frequency that's trying to come to somebody that's serving a mass audience. And that individual frequency sometimes is paid for by the government to make sure that a particular subject matter stays in the troll frequency. Thus, this flat earth conspiracy. When we look at, let's say, the Hindu expression that this is an age of the silver age, the coming or going thus into the golden age, does it align with some of the Christian believings? Yes, it does in theme. But what it doesn't include is this rapture, which was something that was created in the 4th century AD, 400 years after the death of Christ, where none of his apostles and his disciplines had even written books that were accepted by a church, and somebody comes up with this god-awful ending way. Why? Because they were still dealing with the fact that the Bible had 7 different named gods that were the one God that never addressed what? Well, what is the basic flaw there? Because that they never addressed it, their own hierarchical system has created this type of zealotry, whether it's from Knights of Malta, local Christians, missionaries in South Africa, and many of them are good beings. They just don't realize the aggression behind some of their love energy.
Yeah, I mean, I was, when I was in South Africa, I was schooled and brought up by nuns. And, you know, these nuns were really cool, though. You know, they talked about all the different understandings. And I remember that, being at that age, listening to them talking before I had to have my afternoon sleep. And then we'd dream about what they talked about. But these were young people that were traveling, and they had open minds. And the church was a way to help the people and give funding. So there's several different mindsets also for people who do work in those church times. Okay, we're talking 70s at that time. It was a different age, I know, but you know, I have to give sometimes also the credit to the open-minded ones that do trust in the light, have had a lot of good experience. I have a really
cool story to add to that. I learned Reiki from some Ursuline nuns at a 4-year Ursuline college.
Exactly.
In Lyndhurst, Ohio. I mean, you can look it up, and for 11 and a half years they taught Reiki there before the church came down and said you can't do it because you've healed too many people with cancer.
Yeah.
Hundreds of people were healed with cancer, and it was run by nuns.
Yeah.
Wow.
Okay? And all the money that went for it was via donations so that more people could be trained, so that they could have these clinics there where they'd bring people in from all sorts of nursing homes or hospitals, and they bring 20, 30 at a time, and you could have 15, 20 practitioners there curing people.
Yeah.
And there was a church right there, and I can't tell you how many times after I did an incredible healing on someone, I went into the church that the nuns used themselves for their own self-prayer to have my own moment of clearing, because I understood there was still great light and teaching within that. It was just the head of that particular experience chose hierarchical order over the spiritual order.
Yes, and you see, and that was the conundrum right there, and that's now more and more as the control gets stronger, tougher, harder, more restricted. What we had all those years ago, we don't have now by any means.
Can I accept the blessings of the Lord Jesus Christ? Yes, and I can express the blessings of every other being out there.
Exactly.
I just don't have to take the negativity that comes with the zealotry of accepting more than one source.
Yes, because ultimately it's your own heart space that counts, you know, not what anybody has told you. Because a lot of this is like, this is what I explained to a friend of mine. I was sitting there and we were discussing the different, you know, belief systems. And I'm like, just figure this out. You get born, you're then told all the stuff that you then believe, but without having experienced it. Just contemplate that for 1 minute. You're reading it, and because a whole bunch of people says it's true, you're reading it, and now you're allowing that to actually impregnate every single thought process, affect every single thing you look at, be it a colored, be it a specific type of food on a certain day,
How a
be
pear
it
tastes.
be it what marriage symbolizes to you, etc., etc. And you know, just to get people back to that mindset of absolute zero, I'm like, if you landed on this planet today, only knowing love and nothing else, what the hell would you see?
A world of hate, anger, jealousy, suppression, anger, and every other word that describes a being not in heart center.
You wouldn't understand it at all, would you?
No, you
Because it
wouldn't.
doesn't make sense.
You'd be in a sentence like, how can I get him to understand love?
Sense comes in, doesn't it, guys? Think about the whole simple process because it actually is simple.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have no problem what any belief system an individual takes on board either, though, as well. I mean, you never know what they may gain out of it because it could be their journey. But I enjoy interacting with individuals that have the courage to change their beliefs. And Richard Allen Miller talks about it because he set up the Navy SEALs, and what he did was he designed the structure of the education for them is to realize your beliefs are just like a pair of pants. You have the power to change them at any moment.
Exactly.
And I mean,
Exactly.
the thing is, Andrew, is that when you look at what you've offered and the whole scale of how we incarnate with false contracts into our soul code, and we're born into probably the wrong region where we're meant to be born over here, and the regions are controlled. You know, there's a menu system relative to the region that sort of sets us up for failure, and we're incorporated into that regional sort of belief system or structure or whatever relative to the object being controlled. You know, like whether it's a religious control or it's another ideology or yeah.
So when we talk about the control, that we understand the controllers, and it's the individual controllers that create the density. Let's say we use an evangelical priest, one that has a television show that's asking for money. There was the one in the recent headline that was asking $45 million to have a private jet, so he can fly 200 people a year over to Africa or Brazil to go on missionary missions instead of sending them commercial. So we mix the missionary concept with the faith concept, with the growing of money, and we separate what the original faiths were about, which was to go to a place of worship, so that there was a common moral unity, which is, we call the 10 Commandments, which are some good stuff to work by. Thou shalt not kill. I think that's a really good one. Thou shalt not steal. I think that's a really good one either. I think you can refine it as, I don't think we need money, therefore no one will steal. Okay?
Can I still covet your neighbor's wife? Is that one okay?
That's, again, that's choice. Okay? As the hierarchical owner of ownership. Just because one covets does not mean one takes action. When one takes action against a sovereign individual being, then you are dealing at a different level, and you have, where spirituality and Christianity needs to meet the Bill of Rights. And the Bill of Rights is the I am presence, is the one that's experiencing now. We allow ourselves to
have those moments of delineation. It makes this complex world we're living in far easier to deal with. Because every religion is fraught with its own inner issues. Of all of the religions, the closest the ones that got it right were the Buddhists, but they were still off. Is that a hierarchical definition? Yes, that is, because there's no other language for me to describe how far off religion was. Because it ultimately didn't separate the internal source with internal cleanliness. Why? Because it was still using propaganda to proselytize, to be in a hierarchical structure against 5, 6, 7, 50 other faiths that existed at its time of creation. And it used war to eliminate its competition in belief.
Yep, absolutely. Like how did it get to the place of where it's at now? You have to really take on board the whole history of how it got there. Eliminating the competition.
So it is the local priests and church. Right. It is the local priests and church who will take over the new Christianity, as goes with every other religion, because they're the ones that'll be community based. Okay, the community of common people.
The free of the region. Like relative to what the the local reality, which is the language you use to operate relative to those individuals in it. Yeah.
So many things can be done at places of worship that aren't even allowed into consideration. Example, working at the Ursuline College at their actual place where they lived, they allowed that to happen there, which brought a very unique coming together of some nuns who were 80 years old and had never seen this hands-on stuff from Japan, but loved it because we took away their heart murmurs. And they felt the love in the being and didn't have any dogma attached to it.
And also a lot of these beings, they have true heart space. They've dedicated their life to spirit. And, when you have these people that come for help, homeless, abused, starving, the children, the ill, and, as a being that works with spirit and you just want to heal them all, and to be given a tool after all these years besides prayer and hope, to actually be physical, manifest, realize and integrate your healing energy into another and truly know what union and communion is as a people, as a species, that was the greatest gift for these ladies. I mean, after all these years, they could actually do more than speak a word and hope and pray.
When I went to take my craniosacral class, which was taught by Sister Ann Winters, an Ursuline nun, 11 of the 19 students in there were nuns.
Wow.
Because they had their own inner experiences from someone that they've never met that was outside of their faith, that shared love with them enough for them to go through a letting go of depression, suppression, whatever it is they were coming for that individual treatment for, that it made them want to go to an extended study, a year-long study class, so that they could understand at a more deeper human level beyond the faith what's going on in this body of mine. And how much does imprinting the reality really mean?
I mean, just, and you're talking about cranial sacral, and then you have the myofascial and everything, just what they call a somato-emotional release.
Right.
Just to be able to hold your hands on a child and for it to be able to release all the physical abuse.
Right.
From the sympathetic and the parasympathetic,
Yes.
clear it, bring it back to 0 points so that child has a chance.
Exactly.
Huge.
Because trauma is an apparatus of the system.
Absolute.
I remember working on one of the nuns who had just had a pacemaker put in, and I had treated her before, so she was really accepting of having a treatment. And after a pacemaker went in, I put my hand over her heart. She said, it's beeping faster. I'm like, no, it's not. It's just attuning to your energy. And there was this moment where I could have my hand on the front where the surgery scar was, and you'd feel it thump, 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 but on the back you couldn't feel it thump. And as soon as I pulled my hand away, it would start thumping on the back. And what I was able to help her understand is how to allow that machine into her spiritual existence.
Yes, because it's quite something to have foreign matter so
Right.
close to
To
a
your
soul.
heart.
Yes, it's quite something. And those heart makers, they can be regulated remotely.
Yes. And you can use basic biofeedback to properly control your blood pressure through breath, so that you can come back to a semblance of resonance. Okay? So much about faith is a semblance of resonance. When you come to a church, it's the same resonance that's in assemblage. It is just going through its own guidance of education, whether you're being taught about the Bible or you're reading passages that are true teachings of how to do good and how to do bad and how to perceive the good and the bad, versus somebody that has a political agenda that is trying to raise money in between those sections of saying the good works.
Intent. Conscious application.
Conscious application.
I believe that we have like an essential there's a dampening of the best way I could really describe it is of just the awesomeness of creation, the awesomeness of God. There is good science and bad science. There is good spiritual practice and bad spiritual practice, if you will, right? And when you look at bad science and when you look at bad spiritual practice, it's all about these limits, such as our ability to travel being, limited to rocket technology, is limiting our scope of exploration, which is limiting our ability to perceive the greater universe around us. And and some of the ways that we perceive the spiritual world are incredibly limiting to things that science could actually do a service to enhancing, and as well as other facets. Like I tell people, like when I look at good science, it actually, it doesn't validate like your Bible, but it validates creationism in the most general sense, and the ever presence of an active working quote unquote God, if you will, or a spirit world that you may want to call it angels and demons or whatever. But the point is that, you know, good science, as opposed to dark ages superstition and pseudoscience, actually does us a better service, but you can't get past the dogma of it, and that's very, very sad.
I've actually got something to add. And you brought out like the good and the bad science, Steve, or the good and bad beliefs and stuff like that. But this is the energy hygiene and stuff like that, and we can probably go into that if you want. It's like, just because it might be bad for me, what's to say it's not good for another person?
One man's pleasure is another man's pain.
Yeah,
one man's dollar.
Just because I perceive it as bad for me,
one man's dollar is another man's peso. Exactly.
So who am I to judge what is bad for me is bad for another? Because it might be the actual, you know, the consciousness Tetris part that individual needs. And why would I want to impede that? Because for me, I actually take that as a potential karma thing for me to contaminate another's journey. You know what I mean? So that's the neutrality.
Right. It's a way for you to exchange energy that you may not want, because it may alter your course later on when that being is impacted by what you have said.
Yes. Does it resonate? Does it resonate? And am I resonating to it?
Exactly. So resonation is that key frequency. Just what I was saying earlier, when we go into a standard resonance frequency for a church. When we take the basic concept of what a church is and remove all dogmas, we have a place that is designed that people are using community prayers, unity type prayers, whatever method it is doesn't matter, so that beings can exchange positive energy and not be in the dirty energy environment.
And also, once they have learned their understandings, if they need to, if they're endeavoring to go to sleep with the lightest of hearts, as one said, there was the test that the heart would be as light as a feather before going into the dream time, because of what that meant.
Right.
That you then would be able to come into a love heart space place and speak about these experiences that you feel are a burden that you've created yourself.
Yes.
And then find a way to lighten that heart and find remedy and resolve. But what has happened is you've come and you've talked and you get punishment, you get shame, you get blame, you get guilt, you get justice,
vengeance.
And that's how everything is upside down, inside out, and back to front.
That's right.
Welcome back, everybody. And just quickly, we've had so many comments, Steve, about your lovely ladies and gentlemen. You've got Sonia and you've got, oh God, I keep forgetting the name. Would you care to introduce your lovely beings?
Oh, absolutely. On the left, that's Sonia, whom based on Red Sonja. So that's Sonia with a J. That's that's pronounced like a Y for whatever reason it's spelled that way. And not that it matters in the phonetics. And then this is kaiju, which is the Japanese word for a great monster, if you will. Like Godzilla would be classified as a kaiju.
So what are they? Are they red bearded dragons or long bearded dragons?
Yeah, they're bearded dragons. Kaiju is of no particular breed. He's just kind of a basic kind of like grayscale. And Sonya is of a breed called the Crimson Superblood that has a very bright orange scale texture. And she's a little bit bigger.
Wow. So when you do your radio shows, and I just also want to introduce some of the stuff that you do on Revolution Radio, or if you can let our viewers know, but when you do your shows, are they with you?
Once in a while they're with me. I like whenever I'm doing stuff on video, I like them here with me because they're kind of like muses to me in many respects, and B, I always get positive feedback because it's not often that you just see somebody just doing their blog or whatever, and then their pet is just hanging out in the shot, just like that. And because they're not like cats or dogs, they're very, they're not distracting, even if they're getting fidgety. Like they can just be there and just be cool. It's just like, like if I was a pirate, I'd have a parrot, but I'm not. I've got reptiles, because I'm cool like that. So I always get positive feedback whenever I do anything in video this way. My YouTube channel, Hated Patriot 1776. I've got them there in every single one of the videos, except for Kaiju, because I didn't have Kaiju as long as I had Sonya. So when I got Kaiju, then Kaiju joined in every single video. And I haven't made one in a very, very long time, just because when I started doing Revolution Radio, I was getting to say everything I wanted to say and more to a wider audience. And so I kind of deprioritized the YouTube channel, except to be something where I could save all my subscriptions and my likes and my watch histories and whatever for my own personal consumption of both entertainment and information.
Right, and Revolution Radio, they basically live off their listeners. I mean, it's that you don't have some big corporation funding you guys, so you're basically really there, out in the front doing what you can, aren't you?
Yeah, we're entirely like listener supported. We're entirely about the donations. There are select shows that have personal contracts with their hosts for advertisement, such as I work with Sean David Morton. Sean David Morton's Strange Universe has advertisers. All of that is very small amounts of money that are paid just to Sean. Or Douglas Dietrich has one or two advertisers. The Liberty Brothers have like one or two advertisers, but those are just between them. It does not benefit the station in any way, shape, or form. The station is solely benefited by any kind of merch sales, as well as they got things like survival packs and seed packs, the occasional promotional giveaway with donation, but it's really all about the donations. And we have an outlet for PayPal contributions or sending checks. And that's how we get donations in. It's usually a PayPal situation, and we always have a posting of an itemization of our budget and where our donation status is for the month. And I think as it stands, we're maybe a couple hundred, maybe $1,000 or $2 short of goal for the end of the month at the moment, but. We always work hard to reinforce, how we're doing, try to keep things in the black. We had an extreme setback because we had a triple lightning strike fry our, half of our studio. Studio B went down from a triple lightning strike, which I'm suspicious of. But it fried it fried the backup system, and so we had to work off of a temporary system for a couple days. Then we had to go into and then by the end of the week, we gotten all the gear back up to spec, but we're still lagging behind because we still need to make up even more donations because that hit any level of a rainy day fund that we had really, really hard. Hawk holds down basically 3 different forms of income on top of running the radio station. So it's Hawk. That would be Mike Ringley, the owner of the station down in Kentucky, who runs it out of his homestead on his farm. So that's the kind of station that we are. And we keep it that way, so that way there isn't a corporate sponsor that can tell us that subject's off limits. Otherwise, I'm pulling my sponsorship. So we keep no dependency to that. None of the hosts are paid for what they do. None of the staff are paid for what they do. Hawk doesn't even take any money out of that for himself. It all goes towards the station. He doesn't keep a penny. That's why he holds down 3 jobs, one of which is the farm maintenance itself, which then he gets a yield out of it.
He runs a tobacco farm, doesn't he?
Tobacco. I think he's got a couple other things as well, but I believe tobacco is his core crop. So it's so he grows a non-GMO, tobacco farm, and when he gets that, and he sends that off to wherever it goes to get processed and turned into whatever tobacco products his tobacco becomes.
So, I mean, basically, both of you are servants of truth. I mean, excuse the pun, Andre, but, you're really out there. And I know for you, Andre, your name's servant of truth, you really are that, you're just bringing out your documentaries, you're paying for everything yourself, all of your valuable time. Do you want to elaborate a little bit more? What is it like, to keep, something like that going and the hours you spend and what basically a lot of people will ask, what's in it for you? I know what's in it for you because we've understood those understandings, but for the audience, what gives you the highest pleasure of doing this?
I actually like doing it not for anything. It's actually and I mean we've talked about energy exchange and all that sort of stuff, but me, I actually choose because I'm so aware of my energy, I feel it's an investment. I'm putting an investment into humanity, and anyone that gets up to speed with it, that's just a bonus. So, you know what I mean? Like I said about being neutral before and stuff like that, and I for me, it's about my inner perfection. And if you watch them, they're a bit crappy to start off with, and I'm like, oh shit, did I do that? But I get better, and I enjoy that process of improvement in myself. And like I suggested in the other time we spoke, it's a couple of the real things that got me going were these mosaic sort of documentaries that had a lot of teachers all in one spot, and by getting a feel of their words and their perspective of where they come from. Like Bruce Lipton comes from biology, and Michael Zorin comes from being beaten up as an Irishman and stuff, but they've all got their unique paths, but they're all coming to a commonality about this reality. I found that fascinating, and so I've sort of done that, and then I've added Andrew's stuff and some of the other psychics I know and stuff, and realized that, wanting to sort of get past that barrier of accepting stuff that isn't validated via science, you know what I mean? So take it to that next level. But the reason for me doing the documentaries and the website was that the start of 2014, I was writing a lot, and I met someone that triggered me to get into that writing, and he's a good ally as well out there. And I felt I got quite bogged down with the writing, and then the second half of 2014, there was a lot that went on that I don't know if it should be public and stuff, but I still had this desire to get the information out there, because once it's out there, it's a reference. Doesn't matter in the time when an individual finds it, it'll be their right time, but the responsibility is for me to have it there ready, and like I said, there's no responsibility or anything. I feel it's just the timing for me was perfect, and it goes back even to your reading of me, Andrew, and I don't know if I've got this right, but you had, I'm going to create my own drum, and it's going to be like a metaphor. And I realized, like, me create a drum, like, I was a DJ and stuff, but it was a metaphor, and it's the beat of my drum is what is in that music. I mean,
Exactly.
in the, you know, the documentaries, it's a unique expression of me in neutrality with all my experiences, because I've actually had a lot of experiences. So
It is
hopefully that will be out there. Yeah.
Is representative of the moments in time where you came into rhythm and higher unity with the heart space and created harmonious times. So when you went back with advanced hindsight, you could see how much those harmonious times changed you. That beating of your own drum, that creating of your own drum. And one of the other things I reminded you that you were a ship captain that very much understood the oceans, and that journeying for you was vitally important.
Yeah. Absolutely. So, I mean, yeah. So it's funny because, like, I started with the writing, I got bogged down. I thought, well, I need this out there, and I actually did the money documentary, and I got a massive activation from that. It's like, oh, this is what I'm meant to do. So then I was like, then I got into the, you know, that style, and I was thinking, oh, I could do a really big documentary, and I thought, no, I'll break it up to like an hour and let people find it, and it might be part 16 that might be what people need, you know, and just put it out there, and now I'm gearing up to get back into the books. So, like, the website's there, people can go and do their education and whatever and stuff like that, and now I'm gearing up to get the energy in my body to do it, because it's actually quite demanding physically. So yeah.
So it's www.servantoftruth.com.
Org.
Org, yeah, that's why I wasn't so okay. .org.
Yeah. But I like, you were talking about servants of truth, and I feel truth is a great mistress to serve. You know what I mean? Like, we all feel it, and there's parts of it that might be truth for us and truth for another. But you're here, Andrew, as an emanation of getting a consistency across the board. So we all have a reference, and it's a good time to be alive, you know, and being aware.
There's that key word again, consistency. And as a lot of people know, whenever I do a reading, I always ask the person, how did you come across to me? Even if it's a person I've read a second, third, or fourth time, I will still ask that question, because sometimes that actually changes. Where they actually uncovered how synchronicity allowed them, prevented them, or allowed a frequency then that was authentic truth, and it was their own acceptance or denial, as that is an individual sovereign's accepted authentic truth from an energy frequency of heart space. Mm-hmm. Can I go into denial or suppress that being from their personality? And this 1 degree of separation teaching, and what Andre was just saying, leads into the next perspective. You were saying that there's one show that you may, or one part of an episode that may be for that person. The 20-part series I did with Lance White, there were individual episodes that, let's say episode 7 was vitally important to a whole wave of people, but it was episode 14 and 15 that the esoteric people, that's all they wanted to hear was what on those two, and the rest of it they didn't care about, because they've already confirmed it in their own exploration.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The other thing, this is another important thing, and this is what I've done on a consistent level with me. It's returning to a teaching as well, and recovering it. Like, say, for example, your galactic history stuff. I mean, if you've done it and then you give yourself 3 or 6 months, then you go back and review it and see what you pick up, because this is the layer stuff that you talk about, because you've had that experience in that time, and then you integrate more stuff, and then you get the next level. So I've always gone back to, say, Michael Desarian or like your stuff, and revisit it, because it shows me where I'm at as well, because I perceived where I was, and I'm like 2013 I was like hopeless. Nah, that's bad linguistics, but it's like, wow, I can see my development, and it's like, wow, it's very encouraging to keep going.
See, now you've said that buzzword, linguistics, and we're going to add a word before it, neuro-linguistics programming.
Yes,
Let's
yes.
talk about how this insidious technique is being used.
Against everybody, and actually also being used in specific industries where people have trained in that, and they're using that to enforce their beliefs.
Their belief of selling a belief.
Yes. Yeah, that they're using it to, that's right, not even support. I won't even say that. They're using it to sell it
Sell
because
a
that's
belief.
what it is.
It's pitching
not,
a
yes,
sale.
it's pitching a sale.
That's why neurolinguistics programming has come into this industry.
Now, listen, let's quickly, for the people, the viewers here, define what for you neurolinguistics is. Define from the version of what common society knows, plus also from an energetic perspective, what neurolinguistics is and what it means to us when, you know, when it's being used on us.
First thing first, neurolinguistics program is a science that uses words in a particular phrase that create a semblance of a belief system, so that the next layer of energy, whether it's a very high energy or low energy person, passes on a mood or emotion to you. And it's a constant tennis game of mood and emotion between different trigger words. Neurolinguistic programming, when used properly, is used very little times. In today's scenario, they are using it all of the time to pitch their product, have their product placement in. And then this technique, which has created a technique for the big boys to sell their product, has now filtered its way down to many other industries that aren't selling physical products. They're just selling information. And they're using these neurolinguistic programming techniques to do what? Programming you into a belief system. Without you even being aware you're programmed into a belief system, using words and imageries and specific phrases and orders, or using one high-pitched voice versus low-pitched voice, tracks that have no real laughter in them, and they're using laugh tracks, so on and so forth, for ways to confuse the physical energies.
And when the physical energies are confused like that, that's when you can actually insert something, imprint it, yes.
This is where, let's say, neurolinguistic programming is used in a moment, let's say, where something's inserted into the video where only in 1 or 2 frames that it's seen. The parasympathetic side still sees that, even though the eyes don't see that full strain, which creates an emotional response.
Right, like almost like when that lady was taking a selfie at her grandmother's house, and her grandmother had this really huge screen, and it was during the news, and she just happened to take it on one of those throwaway phones, and actually on the screen it was something like it was, I think, a white background or a black background with something like "you will die" or something like, there was something written on there. I remember that. And I was like, wow, you know, because that's what they do on the main news things, and also in those football stadiums. So we were talking about that in another show. So that's another form of neurolinguistics then, that how they imprint you with those types of things, even though you don't see it. But sometimes also when they're talking, you can hear the words, or when you're reading, you read the words. There's specific sequences that if you hear and read as well, it can be done that way, can't it?
It is a science of emotional response study.
Right.
Science understands people buy 85% of the time on
Subconsciously,
impulse.
yeah.
On impulse. Let's take what neurolinguistic programming is, taking that 85% chance in buying whatever it is they're trying to sell. What I'm saying is they're not selling product anymore. They're selling information. Okay? And how are they benefiting? Some don't benefit at all, but still use the technique to drive it home. Example, Alex Jones, classic neurolinguistic programming. Classic. Okay? The personality, Beck, all the guys on Fox News, they all are using neurolinguistic programming. Why? Because they have been forced into that scientific study from their scripts. And that's the only way that they can speak now, is to trigger you emotionally at all times, because they are in bias.
The classic examples of this is that you will see, when we say programming, it is because of the nature of turning the human the human spirit, the human body technology into that of a program, of an AI program, if you will. And so they install the program, and what happens is you go on the news, and when they want to create a concept that they can put an emotional charge on, they will invent the catchphrase and then repeat it over and over and over again with almost a self-evident regiment. A great example in current events right now is the way that they are framing the narrative of the civil war in Iraq by saying that the Iraqi regulars had no will to fight. Now, if you listen to all the major news people, they're taking Ashton Carter's neuro-linguistic program that he said they had no will to fight. That becomes the quotation in the crawl, and then they will repeat no will to fight. Let's talk about this statement that he made of no will to fight. So instead of talking about the substance that led to that, they now go into commentation about the phrase in and of itself. And what they are doing is that they are imprinting an impression of what that means, and then that will box your conceptualization in your mind into a controlled argument. This is the Hegelian dialectic being constructed, the controlled opposition being constructed, for them to set the stage for their left and right paradigms. So one person can take that statement and defend it, and another person takes that statement and attacks it without looking at the validity of the source of information that made that statement in the first place. And that's how they do it. They've been doing it for a very, very, very long time.
I love that definition that you just gave it.
Perfect.
It's that use of repetitive subject matter, but never delving into the subject matter. We classically are exposed to a neurolinguistic program when you walk down the cereal aisle in any shopping center. That's its most blatant level. Now there are
McDonald's. I'm loving it.
I'm loving it. Why are you loving it?
What you're looking at is the Clockwork Orange MK Ultra program done in slow motion as a mass hypnosis technique. So you're not being programmed into a specific directive, but you are being programmed into what they call predictive programming. When Hollywood puts out a particular kind of film, they want to have a predictive programming response to it, like the way America had the discussion about patriotism after the movie American Sniper came out.
Right.
To keep on the theme about this level of the patriotism programming, because that's a big part of the fear, domination, and control matrix that our minds have been put in, because there's the other program, Support Our Troops, which American Sniper is all about in many respects. And, I took a very unique position, I think, because I haven't really seen anybody else jump on the same level for me. When I watched American Sniper and I said, this is an amazing movie. This movie is the complete work of fiction of the mind of Chris Kyle's handlers, but it is a fantastic film. I love Bradley Cooper. I love Clint Eastwood. And it is a interesting interpretation of the book that Chris Kyle claims that he wrote, of events that he claims that he did. Effectively. And then to have the dialogue, because the deepest truth about a film like American Sniper is that this is a characterization of what people that support the troops look at as a character of like Chris Kyle is the kind of guy that we've always believed in, that we are supporting. He is this fictitious he's this Hercules, he's this legend, he's this mythology, he's Captain America, if you will.
Using the other forms of neurolinguistic programming, which is the power of myth that you can create out of nowhere, which is just as powerful as the placebo effect. When you apply the power of myth to someone's fake belief.
Yep, and I mean, and the regiment of discipline within the U.S. Armed Forces is the largest concentrated mind control program on the planet, which then spills over into national patriotism of the American people.
Interesting concept. You broke the programming down, but you gave the story itself its unique acceptance and acknowledgement of the type of story it was, even though the inventor of the story never wrote that story. Well, we can say whatever we want to say. It was written for his presence. Right.
They want to trap you into the argument of this was either a good movie or a bad movie, and the only reason why you'd think it's a bad movie is because you're un-American and you don't support the war and you don't support the troops, and to bulk it into all that and control the national dialogue in that respect. Another guy who comes very close to my view of it, and I saw this retroactively to my review of it, is Adam Kokesh. And we know that Adam Kokesh is a gatekeeper, but he also has done, he's done a decent amount towards a certain perspective, being a retired Marine himself, and speaking out against the leadership of military, and the civilian leadership of military, and the idea of the corporate warfare. And we have to find the way of being able to, yes, honor the troops without also well defining that, because we are highly critical of the very substance of the war that you fought, it is not to dishonor your name. I am not your judge, and I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt that you were innocent and truly believed in the mission that you were doing. And that's unfortunately what you have to do. And I mean, and that's an argument that's made in American Sniper when they got like, there's scenes in that movie where Chris Kyle is reacting to other people that were like, that he was fighting alongside, that were closer in attitude about the war to people like us. And they would die in combat, and and not that he was happy about it, but like for him, the perception is effectively he died because he doubted the mission. And I'm just like,
it's an even stronger form of patriot programming. And what you've just described is classic propaganda, absolute classic propaganda that is designed to create divisiveness. Are you a patriot or are you not? It is to create support amongst those people to continue that suppression of other people who are not patriotic. Anytime you have a war that's glorifying a sniper, you're still glorifying killing. This show isn't about killing. This show adventures into reality. That show is about supporting war. And I know you took a different perspective to do it. It is still glorifying the concept of a person who's killing for a nation. And it is taking away from the fact that we started that war in Iraq. They didn't start that war, as well as all of those wars that are going on since the 1920s. They were all started by the banker organizations. We must again take the true facts into the organizations of who we are, what we are, and the place that we are to understand why propaganda like this exists, to create divisiveness, illusions, and disharmonious actions. We are at a time where when we acknowledge that movie, which has its own entertainment factor. Yes, I did watch the movie, and I do enjoy action movies and spy movies and stuff, and it was a unique expression. I thought Hurt Locker was way, way better of an expression of a military concept. It did not have anywhere near the patriot propaganda, Fox News-esque, paid for this movie drivel.
Yeah, agreed. American Sniper was effectively, it was the movie within Inglourious Bastards. If you've ever seen Inglourious Bastards.
Once again, was glorifying what? Revenge at the war, at the end of the war. Once again, it's to perpetrate and keep in perpetuity revenge and vengeance. We are at a time where when we acknowledge those as, yes, you can watch that for a recreational entertainment because it may actually do something for you, But as long as you apply the understanding, I don't want to create war, the way you honor the troops right now is you bring them home and you heal them and you give them what the VA has actually promised them. Right now, a troop that's returning home receives maybe less than 1/5 of their actual benefits because the VA cannot manage itself. And that is hundreds of years old within the VA. That is not recent. Every time they have ever had a war, they have ignored the troops. Why don't the patriots turn on the VA first? Okay? There's so many obscured, backwards ways of looking at it when it comes to patriot programming. That's why in contract revocations, we do cancel, cure, and delete all patriot program because it is devised to create you hierarchical order, that my hierarchical order that I am putting my tacit belief in allows me and grants me the right to murder and kill this sentient being who is unaware of why I've been given the right to murder them based off of this exchange for value upon fake map lines that have nothing to do with the esoteric ley lines of Earth.
Yeah.
We live at the moment where we must see these facts. We must. And I will do whatever I can do to linguistically create the best frequency for people to understand. There is a different scale in which we must see the world, and we must take some basic facts in when it comes to war first, before heart space. We have been having neurolinguistic programming centuries ago. What is refined today is a science that affects the sympathetic and the parasympathetic, and it fully knows the esoteric concepts to use programming like neurolinguistic programming to do things to you while you are as a young child watching Disney movies or SpongeBob SquarePants or a particular show like Minecraft where all the kids make the exact same noises just like the dang video game. That is an even more insidious form of neurolinguistic programming that gets at a being at its most core understanding of a sentience. It impresses into it materialism and consumerism at the worst levels.
And that death and destruction has no countenance to it. There is no, there's no reaction to that action. Well, there is. It's huge, and it's so multidimensional. It's almost as if it's like, oh, look, that guy's dead, or oh, look, he shot him. Just alone from that perspective, like again, you've landed on this planet, all you know is heart space, and you look down, and what do you see? You see your brothers and sisters killing each other. Why? Because someone told them. Really? Someone told them to? Why? Because if they don't do this, they might not be able to have an education, and they might not even to have a life. Why? Because their parents were so poor. Why were their parents? Because they lost everything. Mm-hmm. They got hit by an Enron or whatever it was. They lost their retirement funds. And it goes on and on and on.
Vicious cycle. It's a vicious cycle.
I don't want to take away from the linguistics, but just one little thing here, okay? Like, say someone gets influenced by this stuff, and we'll use war as a metaphor here. Say if you get influenced and you feel responsibility to go over and do these acts and stuff like that, and maybe you have an influence and you kill someone. From a universal level, we're in a free will universe, so every experience is valid, but
Right.
Karma is the consequence of that. Karma is the universal consequence of your actions. So it doesn't matter if you're programmed or whatever like that. If you go over and you kill someone and you drop a bomb or whatever, there's a cost to you. And this is the karma resolution area of the universe. And you said it's constipated with karma, from the universal perspective. So that has an influence to maintain the system. Do you want to share something on that, mate?
Earlier in the show, I talked about how war was being used to permeate a way to make sure that people were resolving karma instead of hanging out in the astral worlds and letting the advanced guys do it. And there was a time, we're going to go like 18, 19 million years ago, where the astral worlds were full of people who weren't going into human bodies because they knew how bad it was about to get. And you had almost no one incarnating on the world except the goody two-shoers always out there doing what Earth says first. And that's when they instituted false light technology, is to make the astral worlds a ghost town, to get everyone out of there incarnating into bodies. Because false light technology is ultimately what creates the separation that we need war to come back into unity.
Mm-hmm. Divide and conquer.
Divide and conquer. We've divided their astral
Yeah,
world from their physical world.
I've recently sort of come across this understanding of what I mean. Military has many levels. You know, there's a humanitarian thing where they help out disasters and stuff, and I'm full credit for that. But my perception of the true purpose of the military is they're the firemen of the ley line, the natural grid surfacing. So they go over and then they put out the fire with war and destruction, where they traumatize the earth with the military equipment, and then the death and destruction imprints that onto the natural grid, which suppresses the natural grid. And so when these wars that don't make sense, they go on in some region, they're actually designed to trap the natural earth grid, trying to penetrate the artificial.
Exactly. That's why that's why sacred geometry technology is in the Middle East. And that's why there's war in the Middle East. It is preventing the opening of the womb chakras, because the technology there is to assist their opening during times of change like this. As well as the womb chakras all spread throughout the world that have other sacred geometry system about them that is bringing war energy there in a different way. Whether it's somebody in New Zealand that's watching what's going on in Iraq, or you have a person in America what's going on in Afghanistan, it is bringing war to their front step via the propaganda news. It is being shared at a whole different layer and scale right now.
So, like, I mean, like, I've got friends that are refugees from Vietnam, you know, and that whole war just was a total lie, you know. And you've also talked about when the consciousness level reaches like a 10% soul group in a region, that's when war kicks off. And I mean, those sort of things are constantly happening, and the need for war is going exponential. And the key is to be in the neutral, you know, not feed it, and recognize, like, when say
it's not the need for war.
It's affecting you, you know.
It's not the need for war. Is there money to create a war? You see, we have been trained as slave societies. For every few lifetimes, we go through a self-culling because we get into these big wars, whether it's on your local clan level or at a global scale. We have been doing these self-cullings for so long, and we've ended them before and had thousands of years of beauty happen, and the system was thrown off, and we were able to get some beings off-world and traded some other beings back. But that was okay because we were still in this, we're in charge of our own rudder. We aren't in charge of our own rudder as a global species. That's why individuals have to take their power back from the system. A system that wants you in gladiatorial combat, whether it's real or fake, with everyone that's in your environment. It wants you to be in capitalism, materialism, and consumerism first before you make any other choices that could possibly affect the greatness of your future.
I got something here to respond to that about our state of war and everything else. Is I had come across this article that like really astounded me as I was reading it, and this is a testament of what we're doing here, the good that we're doing, like with all of these different broadcasts that we put out, people that are writing all these different articles or whatever. All this stuff in the conspiracy world, especially when we're writing claims about things that we can back up, that at the very least, even if officials can't believe it or refuse to believe it, the average layperson, quote unquote, could believe it, right? This was on Prison Planet, which is an Alex Jones thing, but there was an article about how ISIS is losing recruitment because they're reading about conspiracy theories on the internet, and they suspect that that ISIS is backed by the CIA.
It's backfired against them.
It's exactly. It's finally come around where somebody with the internet in Iraq and Syria is paying attention, and they're like, wait a minute. Why do I want to go into jihad? What? It's just like they're getting realized that they've been played. They're starting to finally realize that they're getting played, and they're being duped into religious fanaticism to go off and do this whole thing. They're finding out that it's not just ISIS, but it was also Al Qaeda, and all these other little insurgency groups. And so something just, something is exponentially falling apart in the most quintessential program for having a controlled insurgency, for having a covert war. It's not going to work, in the near future, because they're picking up on these things, and I'm not sure when exactly that's going to fully manifest, but here we are.
Right. They need to stop pitching the sequel.
And then here's a contemplation. What's the difference between a patriot and a fanatic when you're looking at the energy streams?
Well, you can have patriots that are fanatics.
Yes.
A fanatic is someone that has gone so far into polarity that there is no other choice other than what their programs have defined them to be.
To kill or die for it.
Well, it depends on the level of zealotry that you're in. There are many levels of patriot that only do it out of hollow respect, because if they don't, they will be judged.
Right.
And they're worked enough in their lifetime, they know they don't want that frequency of being judged around, so they just do it. Much like there are people that go to church once a year for Christmas. For the rest of the year, they don't go. They do it out of the tradition to do that. We must begin to separate who is doing it out of the tradition to do it and who is actually honoring that energy. We live in a world of instant gratification, so if I buy a yellow rose ribbon and I put it on my wall, am I actually helping the troops? Well, considering you've just had a half of all of the major cancer organizations of the United States be sued by the United States Justice Department for absolute 100% rampant fraud, that not one damn cent that they took, $170 million of cancer fund money, never saw a single person. And this is rampant amongst every charity and has been like that for 30 years, and yet we still give monies to these charities that never actually do anything.
Because it's easy and it makes us feel good.
The instant gratification once again.
It's that impulse, right? It's just like, like if you go to the grocery store, a participating member might be like Stop and Shop or wherever your grocery store is. And while you're right there at the register, the register lady who's under a quota from from front management is just like, would you like to donate $1 to cancer research? And it's right there. It's just $1. You're already spending $100 on grocery, and you're charging it to your credit card. So you're just like, yes, because that sounds good.
Or it's like a rock concert, and in the dedication of some purpose, and then you go back to the scene after the concert, and the ground is just absolutely trashed by the people there.
Right. The disrespect for that particular process or event that was going on, because their cognitive dissonance has taken over and they're dumping their dirty energy on a place that was meant to have a sacred exchange.
Yeah.
Well, once again, we fall into that classic teaching of exchanging energy. We've had so many conversations, this first part and this second part, and once again it comes back to understanding the a la carte belief system. What serves you now that is best for you in the now, that makes sure you're nourishing the inner ember inside with positive wind energy to make sure that ember is glowing till you can make a bunch of other spirit wood around it, so you are once again in the flow of passion and spontaneity without the limits of the system telling you no, 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 no.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're not a passenger to it. You're a mastery of it. And the thing is, like, getting back to the linguistic programming and stuff. And the way I see it, it's like in a lock, where you pick a lock and you've got to lift up the thing to allow to get the second part in to jimmy the lock open. The linguistic programming is like getting you in the brainwave state to allow the unlocking of who you are into your energy field. And when you've got mastery of the parasympathetic and your energy field, you can feel the penetration going on, and that's where the mastery comes.
Exactly.
It doesn't affect you. It doesn't affect you. You know it. You can feel it, and it's like, wow, this thing's washing over me. Why am I allowing that? And you go through it. You don't suppress it, but then you let it go. And it's not a bad thing to get caught up with it, because it's experience. You have a reference, the wisdom.
A cool example of what you're talking about is the show America's Funniest Videos. So they have things where you see cute babies doing this, and then the other half of the show is people getting hit in the nuts, falling down steps, having bicycle accidents, where you have a false live audience laughing to moments that are of pain.
So you're being trained to laugh at pain.
Correct.
Yeah. I mean, that's interesting, because you see, do you remember that one meeting we had, and there was a group of people, and there was a single father who was a comedian, and he was talking about his son.
Yes.
And he was like, well, you know, if this happens, I just teach him to laugh about it, and
to laugh all the energy off.
to laugh it all off. But the thing is, you taught him then something really, really important after that, because if you get hit in the face, you don't just laugh it off. There's a whole different type of processing, and the words you chose to give to this young father was so neutral but very clear in their understanding.
It was a being that had taught himself how to laugh off all pain because of the abuse he went to as a child. And he was going to pass on that karmic belief to his own child, to laugh off all the pain, to be that rebel, and you get to go out and experience the ecstasy. And if you get hurt during that ecstasy, it's more ecstasy because you can turn it into laughter, because that's how that individual being had to go through his life, because so many bad things happened to him. If he didn't laugh it off, he couldn't survive.
That's right.
And that was his only coping skill. And I helped him understand, if you're going to do that, you're going to limit that kid's ability to love, to think, to see. You're going to limit him the way you were limited by your own father, by not teaching you the right way of how to deal with pain, how to acknowledge pain, how to express it emotionally, so it does not retain into you for days, weeks, months, or years.
Coping mechanisms that you either don't snap or just die of a really aggressive, really quick form of cancer.
Or you do something stupid like, I can laugh off anything, and the next thing you know, you find yourself in a fight with somebody that you can't stop because that person is hyper aggressive.
Yeah. That's right. So you're either dead or you snap yourself.
What are you going to be, the laughing idiot that's getting punched, headbutts to his fist?
Yeah.
It comes time for people to really understand humor is one thing, but when we use humor to hide things, it is part of our personality that is accepted other neurolinguistic programming that's keeping us away from the love first choice. Everything it comes down to fight or flight first. If we go, hey, I don't have to choose fight or flight first in any decision, I get to come from heart space love and unlimited knowingness. Do I know what next word I'm going to say? No. Do you know what next word? Does anyone know the next word that they're going to say? No, you really don't. Yes. That's called the living in the now.
I knew I was going to say yes a second before I said it.
But you didn't say it until you said it.
But
why don't you say what you say when you said what you said when you
say what you say?
But you're not giving your life force away in that fight or flight milking as well. So you don't allow disease in, because disease is just a frequency.
Right. And that fight flight is the first two things that say tacit consent, tacit consent. Yeah. Those are the first two choices of tacit consent coming to you every moment you are breathing in this reality. Have either of you just been in a room and something fell in the corner and it scared the crap out of you, or you jumped up and screamed like a little girl? We've all had those moments. Yeah. Why? Why do we scream like a little girl when we get scared like that from something dropping in there?
Because we've been taught to react so accordingly.
And to empower it.
And to empower it. That's really interesting, because there are some children that I work with, and I've been working with them for a while. And whenever these children weren't really, with other children. And so, when they hurt themselves, we taught them how to heal. And they're like, oh, yeah, But all of a sudden, they start to be amongst the other kids, and they come up with words like, owie, I've hurt myself. And they really get into that, and they have a trained response of how they need to react when there's pain, instead of noting, oh, yes, something's happened here. Right. All right, let's go in, let's heal it, and then let's move forward. No, there's something really dramatic, and that's just so slight. But that was something that I noticed in their behavior, and I'm like, you know how to heal it.
So society rewards the victim. Society rewards the victim.
Yes!
Daddy rewards the victim. Once again, how men and women are taught differently about money at a young age.
Oh, gosh, yes.
That is that other divisive teaching practice that parents have no idea how insidiously it affects their children deep into their future.
That's right. You know, Andre, you know about the linguistics as well. You had some really interesting insights there.
Yeah. I mean, a lot. It's a factor of the reality. Like most of us are all passengers of it, but and so like NLP sort of those sort of things get influences over us. There's another aspect that I actually had a lot of training on with the guy that put me back together after some stuff like a shaman, and that's the thoughts, feelings, emotions, and the intent behind your words and what you offer. Like it's the responsibility of the words that you put out there, because they actually have an energy as well. It's not related to what you receive, it's what you offer. So it's being in alignment with yourself and speaking your truth. You know, speaking your truth in everything you do and being authentic. It's just one aspect of it. So yeah, that was just something I wanted to offer, because you can always be responsible. You can always increase the amount of responsibility you have, because everything has an effect. You know, it's that web sort of aspect. So if you master your words and you're feeling exactly what you're saying, people feel it. You know, it activates them, and they'll resonate, and it will energize the conversations and stuff like that. And I can guarantee with you, like, people know if you're being honest or not. And you deal with someone like Andrew, and you're totally transparent, especially many of the psychics out there. They can see through the facade. So it took me a while to be really courageous to sort of live it. But once you do, it's very nourishing, you know, because you're not living any falsehood.
Right.
You know?
Also, many of us have no justice or judgment behind the site.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter if you're telling truth or telling lies. It is your perspective. And then if we do judge it, we're falling into polarity, not following the sacred neutral path, which is to be neutral witness observers who don't take on the programming that may be embedded into the information. And there are all sorts of unique triggers built inside the Akashic record, so observers get triggered into it. And it's not the earth that's writing it, it's because our symbology, our esoteric symbology, can imprint those that are remote viewing it through 2 degrees of separation through different versions of time, and that programming of those esoteric concepts will pass over to the light body that's viewing it and going to remember it as photonic light, because there are certain patterns that are created in these photonic realms that become big machines, kind of like a Tesla infinite energy machine. It can create over unity because that symbol itself takes a command of thought power that is connected to many other millions of lifetimes that have used that symbol as a form of reality manipulation equation.
And with that, I think we're going to end episode 2, because that was just oh, you know, that's just perfection. It's like listening to a symphony. When you talk like that sometimes, Andrew, it's just, I mean, all of us literally were gobsmacked, okay, at what you've just brought out yet again.
And there was no wow. Yay.
It was a silent integration into yourself, cellular memory.
See, sometimes when I get the wow, it's, okay, cool, I made them wow, but I do that so many times, it's like, aren't you going to get it instead of wow? So a lot of people know that we're going to be filming Galactic History 2 sometime later this year. Mm-hmm. So I would like for people to consider, for this next episode that's coming up, to go and revisit some of the concept on Galactic History 1. I'm not asking you to go and rewatch it, but if you want to, that's cool. But first thing first is think to your mind, what are the 5 most obvious things that I can remember from that 20-part series? If you cannot grasp what are the 5 common concepts out of that, take time to question, why do I listen to this material? Is it the stream and voice that I'm in? That's cool. We're putting on a TV channel and a TV station to fit to all the different tastes that are out there. The Akashic Records are not just limited to our history. They're meant for the beings of now to apply future experiences and past experiences so we can have unlimited choices of now. Because we did not have the unlimited table of belief systems before. We had a handful of belief systems that were spoon-fed to us at birth. So take that time. Have that infinite toolbox of belief systems that you can apply at any moment. Take a look back at those galactic histories. Write down what you can remember, the 5 things that really connected to you. And I ask these for specific reasons because there's stuff in there that has been overlooked and overlooked and overlooked. People like Andre, who have listened to a lot of shows, have connected the dots, not because they've listened to more shows, they've just listened to the key shows where the teachings from one are the next layer to the other, because it took a period of months before the social consciousness absorbed what those original language was, so the next layer can be spoken in the colloquial now.
Indeed.
There's a perspective that is coming from that being who was in Mount Shasta on the 21st of June, 2013, who had given a 6-month ovation that I was going to go there and read a 54 million year galactic timeline history times 4, because I was explaining the entire paradox. That was the spiritual contract that I had at birth, what I accomplished. And then on that time, we were being hit by solar flares of the most intense kind. 2013, go back and look it up. There's an individual being there, including Lance, who was also the other side of that duo, because a single person could not tell that without somebody asking the nature of the questions of what that esoteric expression was. You will see a very unique, suspended in moment 2013 expression that is bringing, without polarity, a perspective of our multi-universal history. This multi-universal history is going to be coming to a more public understanding as esoteric concepts such as what Steve was talking about in the military and the churches, and same with Andre and Natalie, as those become prevalent as layers of propaganda that create patriotism, the lust for war, or that for a patriarchal order and not an equal equity amongst masculine and feminine. We can once again break down the most things. Is everybody in equal balance or not? Is it a hierarchical order? Is there going to be one person at the top and screw everyone at the bottom? It doesn't need to be that way. When we come together at the most basic understanding, we all share red blood, we all breathe oxygen, we all think, we all have a set of inherent rights granted to us by whatever our creator belief is, for what purpose, to live this life, for whatever means necessary, for whatever purpose necessary spiritually, to graduate karma, to have a Christian experience. They are your individual experiences. What we are saying is you have 100% contrast control at all times. You just must learn to use that contrast control. That's free will.
That's beautiful. Namaste.